Hey guys, welcome back for another exciting video. This week I'm going to be building a high-value furniture piece for a customer's personal office. The question I have for you guys is, did I price it right? Stay tuned. Hey guys, this is Jared with Rustic Approach. Thanks for tuning in. Going to have another exciting video for you guys this week. During this build, I'm going to show you guys exactly the process that I go through on breaking down a live edge slab, filling it with epoxy, going from logs to lumber, from the iDry kiln to my shop, out to the customer. So if you guys will follow along, kind of show you guys some of the costs that I incorporate into my business. For one, to the owner of the slab, obviously for the build, then all of the things that I have to use in my actual shop that I always factor in for the total cost of each build. This Monkeypod slab came from our warehouse. It is, or was, 12 foot by 30-inch slab and 10-quarter thick, which is 3 inches. I'm just breaking down this slab after I took it off the Slab Mizer and got it flat, getting it prepped. So if you guys follow along, appreciate you showing up and enjoy the video. So getting ready to cut this back edge, and this is normally a pretty simple process, but for some reason, not today. Normally a pretty easy process right there, using the track saw to get through, 2 or 3 runs, get through some of the tension in the slab. But today, I had to drive my chisel on the back edge because the riving knife was getting pinched there at the edge. Moving on, just squaring up the slab on each end, getting it all squared up before we get into prepping the slab for epoxy. I'm sure some of you guys are thinking, what am I going to do with that crack right there? As you can see at the end of the end grain there, it's obviously got a low spot. But you will see when we get farther into the build my plans for that. Here I'm prepping my bench for melamine board. I usually get this at Menards or Home Depot. It's usually around $70 to $75 depending on where you get it. They come in a 4x8 sheet, but it's really simple to use with epoxy. You can see here I just used my T-square, made some lines, and I'm screwing it down to my worktop. A lot of people build forms. They use a lot of the 3M tape to seal it off so the epoxy doesn't stick to it. But for the most part, the melamine board is simple. Back to my small Bosch router, using my Christmas tree cut-saw bit. I don't really know if it's called a Christmas tree bit or not, but cut-saw makes some 1/4-inch bits that'll fit in your router, so your router's got a lot more speed than just a little Dremel tool, so that's why I tend to use it to clean up all my crevices and cracks in my slabs. The slab wasn't too bad, but that crack was pretty long, and I had a low spot, if you could kind of tell from the end grain when I was using my square cuts. Monkeypod tends to have a really open pore grain. So I always like to use my sander after I kind of clean it up on the top, because I like to seal my slabs. I'm going to show you that here in a little bit with epoxy top, or a deep pour epoxy. This restorer really gets the trick done. It's pretty awesome, actually. You can kind of see a lot of the cambium layers kind of crumbled here on this Monkeypod, and Slide Edge Restorer just really takes some of that dotiness away too, especially here on the edge. It's pretty sweet, isn't it? The thing just basically cleaned it completely up in less than like 2 minutes. This knot was just full of dope. Did have a subscriber ask me a couple weeks ago on some chisel work that I was doing an inlay with, and he asked me what chisels I like to use, and these are Zenwu Y2. I believe it's called Zenwu Toolworks. It's Luke from Zenwu. He owns Zenwu and started it, but he is actually an MIT student that came up with these chisels. They're excellent. And the Christmas tree has landed. And this is what I was talking about earlier. I used the epoxy top from Eric Landrum's, actually the owner out of North Carolina. But here I'm getting ready to seal the top of this slab. And like I said, I use deep pour it makes a really good penetrating epoxy. And that's what I do to all my slabs, because for this particular build I'm using a solid black filler, or basically a dye. It's UV resistant as well. And so I always put my stopwatch right there in front of the camera when I'm mixing it up. But no matter the size of quantity that I'm using, I always go 7 minutes or beyond. Something kind of learned early on in the process is epoxy is all about mixing. Scrape it off the sides, keep mixing. You can use a drill, you can use a little stir stick like I do here. But for the most part, I always go 7 minutes or beyond. I don't think you can actually mix it too long, but 7 minutes is always my minimum. And then I just use a brush. You can use a roller. Today I didn't have any roller pads with me, so I just used some brushes that I had. So I always coat the whole top, the entire end grain, the back edge. Once it sets up, that's when I will get ready to put this down on top of this melamine so I can make my form. I usually wait 24 hours for the deep pour to set in, because what I don't want is for the black to bleed into the Monkeypod. And as porous Monkeypod is, it's kind of like walnut or white oak. You ever been cutting a log on the mill? You get into some blue spots, you know that log's been infected by a nail or a deer spike from deer hunters using foot pegs. Well, with Monkeypod, like walnut and white oak, they bleed the most. And it will show up. And it is unsandable. Here I'm just using some 3M tape. I used to use Tyvek tape all the time, and the Tyvek tape is really hard to pull off the epoxy. And the reason I say that, not that it sticks to it, but let's just say that you put it down on the melamine board like I did the 3M tape here. All that was just to seal the joints up and the screw holes that I put the melamine down with. But the Tyvek wants to leave the residue after you try to pull it up. With this 3M tape, if I want to take it up and replace it, it usually just peels right off without leaving a sticky residue. In here I just on the top, this is how I basically create my form with a live edge instead of building a form. So I caulk all my edges all the way around, as you can see, and then I went all around all the cracks, and I pushed it down on top of my melamine there to create a seal. Then obviously I'm just using some C-clamps and some 2x4s to keep it flat on the table and keep it suction down to it. I found this way to be easier with the live edge when pouring more than a small cup of epoxy for these cracks and crevices instead of building a form. There's a pretty big process to building a form, 4 squares, but when you got a live edge, you don't want to fill up your live edge. I think the single sheet of laminate, or here melamine, and then a couple stops at each end of your end grain is the best way to pour. I think this is the simplest form one can build for a single live edge. And I just use latex caulk here. I've probably got 5 or 6 tubes in this build, so probably around $20–30. I think they're around $2.50 a tube. It's just latex caulk, but for this build, I let it set up probably for about 12 hours before I poured epoxy. We're kind of in fast forward for the video, but I'm sure you guys didn't want to watch me just caulk a slab all day. It is kind of boring, this entire process. I understand, but it's an important process. It's important for me, so I don't get any leaks. You guys out there, maybe y'all don't get leaks, but I do believe that experience is worth something. And here I'm just sealing the bottom of it around where I'm going to pour it. I'm not too worried about the bottom bleeding because it is the bottom of the cabinet build, or the top for the cabinet. So really not worried about the black bleeding, but I did create some dams with the caulk, obviously. So I'm just basically sealing it off and pouring it into some of the cracks. You can kind of see at this end where I've got the low spot. It's pretty big by that crack. So I'm just filling that up. It's going to be on the end and towards the back of the build, so you're not going to be able to see it. So I have to fill that up. I think it took me around 2 gallons to fill the bottom of this table up. Those cracks in the middle were pretty deep and they were all the way through. But right there where I'm filling it in probably took the most time. Doing a little top off here, trying to make sure where it's shrunk the most. Go ahead and finish it off. "24 hours. So we do a little check here. See how it's put a little dent in it. It's good. So I just thought I'd check the temp. Pretty good. So it's been sitting in the mold probably for about 5 days. I finally got a good cure on it. One of the big things I'd like to stop and do right now while I'm taking this thing out of the form is kind of go through the costs that we've incurred up to this point. Caulk, epoxy, melamine, and the slab so far. So what I'm doing right here is like one of my worst nightmares. You're like, you're glad to pull the slab out of the epoxy after it's been curing for 5 days, but you're like, what's on the other side, man? Can we get there? So I love chainsaws. So I'm always having to buck logs at the mill. And I always have, felling wedges and things because I use felling wedges all the time at the mill. Obviously, you've seen me use them with my track saw. Any kind of pinch. But this was kind of anxiety ridden. This clip is actually only like a couple minutes compared to what it actually took me to get this thing off the melamine, kind of what I call the form for me on a single slab. But this is what it's like doing this by yourself. I'm sure a lot of you guys out there can relate to me. But I've probably went around this table 4 or 5 times trying to break this mold from or break this slab from the table. And I always use felling wedges. One of my first mistakes ever in this game was trying to use a pry bar. And what I did, the pour went good, but when I went to break it from the table, I put a huge gash in the underside. So I'm really careful with the felling wedges, but that was my sigh there. I saw that melamine, and I'm just like, damn. It is what it is. Just cost myself $70 for a sheet of melamine. But everything held, as you can see. So I know that'll come off. I'm just glad the epoxy didn't stick. Now I can put it back on the Slab Mizer and get all this caulk and epoxy cleaned off. Actually pretty happy with the way it held in the mold. That caulk is so instrumental in keeping that slab suction to the melamine. Do you guys like that effect? A little blower, a little video. I don't know. Thought I might have got you guys. Been doing a lot of blowing around here lately. We just got hit with a massive snowstorm in Kentucky. We've had probably 10 or 12 inches here and like 4 or 5 inches of ice. So I'm actually working on this slab and can't really get around outside. It's snowing, sleeting. It's actually pretty shitty. Oh, probably can't say shit on YouTube. Pretty slushy. The bottom of the slab's solid black because I used my grinder with a 7-inch pad to clean off all the epoxy and the caulk from the bottom side so I could make sure it was flat when I lay it down on the Slab Mizer. So that's just epoxy dust. It's actually cleaning up really good. And this low spot that you can see on the screen in the left corner there, it's actually only about 12 inches up the back side and only ended up probably about an 1/8 inch thick. Turned out good. Going ahead and getting the slab squared up after I took it off the slab mill. Getting it cut down to dimension. This one was actually 20, the cabinet was actually 10 foot long by 24 wide. So I actually made this slab 10 foot 1 inch so I could have a 1/2 inch overhang on the sides, and 24.5 wide at your live edge. It was 26 to the center of it, as you can kind of see that kind of jets out on the live edge right there. Then just cleaning up the end grain there. Can't tell you how much I love using that restore. Cleans up all that Deep Pour Epoxy right off the live edge, so clean. Like I said before, the Deep Pour Epoxy, I use it to penetrate almost all of my larger live edge slabs. Obviously when I'm pouring epoxy, just so the epoxy doesn't bleed into the rest of the grain, but it also hardens up. Hey, you guys like Dr. Pepper? Like and subscribe. I'm using a 60 grit. I usually kind of fluctuate between 60 and 80 just to clean off any of the deep pour. And I get it cleaned up before I start to do any filling. Had a bunch of tear out. Well, I wouldn't say a whole lot, but I had a few spots in the epoxy. The product that I'm showing you right here is called P-TEC 8400 filler. I like to use black. It's kind of like the Rangate filler that I use. It's almost like a hot glue, but this filler sets up hard as a rock. It's just a 1-to-1 ratio, and it's literally hard as a rock. It's almost like a 2-part epoxy that you would get from like Lowe's or something, or like Alumina Bond or something, Tight Bond. Not Tight Bond, but those epoxies that you can mix together to like metal pipe or PVC. It's really a lot like that because it gets so hard, and then you sand it off and it doesn't bleed. You know, it's not a liquid. And I use it for all those spots on my epoxy or small holes, especially for the holes in the chatter from the Slab Mizer that hit the epoxy and the tear out that you have. I didn't really have many air bubbles that came to the top on this. That's why I like to pour from the bottom side of my slabs. If you pour your epoxy from the bottom to do all your filling, most of the time the air bubbles, if you have any, will come to the surface on the bottom instead of the top. So, you know, I don't really have that issue when I pour from the bottom on the top edge as far as having a bunch of air bubbles to fill. And if there's anything that I can tell you guys that I have learned, I don't really use Star Bond fillers much anymore, because the Star Bond, the super glues, they don't stick to epoxy. Remember that. For me, I've never had them work out real well, so I quit using the Star Bond. I only use it to fill small crevices, maybe, or a small pinhole. Ain't nothing without you. The stars, guitars, yeah, just say it too. I don't know anything about that, but if you want, like and subscribe. A lot bigger to do. You know, sometimes when you do everything by yourself, you know, you kind of find a rhythm when you wear AirPods. I tend to wear AirPods most of the day. I work by myself, so I come up with quite the melodies. coating the bottom side here with Rubio Monocoat, 3-to-1. I don't know if you guys know that, but I'll go ahead and give you a little rundown on Rubio Monocoat. It's always 3-to-1. It doesn't matter what serving size you choose. Just make sure that you have 3 parts oil to 1 part hardener. So right here you can just see I'm just getting the bottom all done. This way I can flip the slab and finish working on the top a little bit. I will say that my fill spot ended up being a lot smaller than I thought. I really thought the thing was going to be about a 1/2 inch thick and show through on the side. But it only ended up being about an 1/8 inch. I usually put Rubio Monocoat on. When I do a 10-foot slab like this, the quantity, I hate to waste it because it is actually a pretty expensive product, but the natural look to it and that matte finish looks so good on this Monkeypod. So I usually do like 3 ounces to 1 ounce, which is quite a bit. But Monkeypod is a real open grain type of hardwood. Okay guys, so up to this point we're at around $3,000 for total cost. That includes basically the slab, epoxy, melamine board. The only thing that I haven't really included in that cost, I got 21 hours of labor. So basically I came up with a fair price in my account of around $5,000. I guess my question to you guys is, what do you guys think? Do you think cost plus? Do you think double the initial input? Really curious to see what you guys think. And I use a burgundy Scotch-Brite. Some people call it red. But just for your information, if you're curious, a lot of people think that it scratches the finish or scratches your surface, but it's really a 220 grit. That's what the pink pad or burgundy pad, red pad is. When people say to apply your finishes with it, it's really a 220 grit. So you're not scratching the surface of it. You're basically just pushing it into the grain. So after 24 hours, I'm going to go ahead and probably hit this with another coat of Rubio. I always do 2 coats. I know it's a monocoat, but I always enjoy 2 coats. Just makes me feel better before it goes out. Very happy with the way this build completed. This Monkeypod slab was pretty high ticket item, obviously from our stock Monkeypods. Pretty big, tall order for a lot of clientele around here. And we just so happen to have been the go-to for this customer and hope to have many more like him. Really hope you guys like the video. If you don't mind, please like and subscribe. And if you guys want to see more content like this, send me some comments. Also, by far, I have the biggest build video that's dropping soon. So if you like and subscribe, you guys get to catch that content too. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.